another Tom, Dick, or Dave. These are our frenzy faves.
Chris, tell us about the episode we're looking at today.
Thank you, Prof. We're going to look at The Last Rites of Jeff Myrtlebank. This was from Season 3. It was episode number 23. It was directed by Montgomery Pittman. It was written by Montgomery Pittman, and it had an original air date of February 23rd, 1962. For our cast, we had James Best as Jeff Myrtlebank, Sherry Jackson as Comfort Gatewood, Edgar Buchanan as Doc Bolton, Lance Fuller as Orgum Gatewood, Dub Taylor as Mr. Peters, Ralph Moody as Pa Myrtlebank, Ezell Poole as Ma Myrtlebank, Helen Wallace as Ma Greenwood, Vicki Barnes as Liz Myrtlebank, John Lormer as Strauss, James Houghton as Gerry, and William Fawcett as Reverend Siddons. Prof, what happens in The Last Rites of Jeff Myrtlebank?
All right. So Jeff Myrtlebank is dead. He's in a pine coffin at the church, and the church is full of the 1920s local country townsfolk of this southernmost Midwestern town. While his funeral is being held, and the coffin opens up, and Jeff sits up. He's a little confused, but he's definitely not dead. He's fine. Much to the confusion of the town and embarrassment to Doc Bolton, who pronounced him dead. And he comes up with some weird rationales for why Jeff isn't dead like he pronounced. Doc Bolton even used the pinprick test that they used in Charade to make sure Jeff was dead. This is before Charade came out, so I don't think he got the idea from there, but there you go. So the town wonders what could have happened. Is Jeff a vampire? A haint? You know, sometimes evil spirits go looking for a body to inhabit. Maybe that's it. Jeff kind of aw-shucks his way through all this. Don't you remember me? Ma, Pa, my girlfriend Comfort? Yeah, his girlfriend is named Comfort. Everyone is totally freaked out by him. But his sister Liz gives him a big hug and everyone chills out. However, as time goes on, Jeff's parents notice that he's subtly different than he used to be. He doesn't eat the same number of eggs he used to. Also, he isn't afraid of work like he was. Weird, but things happen. Maybe he's growing up. Jeff goes a-courting to Comfort's house. She's glad to see them, and they have a nice time, but once he goes to touch her, she pulls back, and he leaves. Comfort's brother Ogram comes out while Jeff is cranking up his automobile and tells him to never come back or he'll beat him up. Ogram reminds Jeff that he's been beating him up since they were kids. Jeff says, bring it on, and they fight, and Jeff kicks his butt. Weird. That's new. The men of the town are freaked out about Jeff and decide to confront him and kick him out of the county. They all drive over to Jeff's place and tell him to leave with Comfort in tow. Jeff asks why, and they say that they suspect he's some kind of unearthly being or whatever. Jeff says, but I'm not that. I'm just the good old Jeff. But if he is a supernatural creature, he might wave his hands and kill their chickens and ruin their crops and stuff. They should be nice to him. They realize he's not wrong and all agree, ha ha, you wouldn't do that, would you, good old Jeff? Ha ha. Comfort comes to his side and agrees to marry him. The townspeople leave their new good old buddy Jeff. See you around. When Jeff and Comfort are alone talking, Jeff goes to light his pipe, but the match bursts into flames without being struck. Comfort asks how, and he tells her she's just being silly. Oh, boy. They go into the house, and the gate closes itself behind them. Rod Serling helpfully tells us that Jeff and Comfort married and had a kid who is now a senator. Great. Fantastic. So I really enjoyed this episode. I have to say, I love this episode. James Best is fantastic as Jeff. He's so compelling. He's got this aw shucks vibe and a gentle, kind charisma that the camera loves. And it's great that it's like, oh, there is something up. The townspeople are also fantastic. Dub Taylor is great. Edgar Buchanan, who in my head is always Andy Devine's older brother for some reason. I don't know why, but I just think they have a similar kind of funny way of talking and stuff. And James Houghton is a familiar face too. John Lormer is one of the townspeople, and he was in a lot of Star Trek. The Cage, Return of the Archons, For the World is Hollow, and I Have Touched the Sky. This was a simple story, but the acting and vibe make it a light, fun, but still menacing episode. I loved it. I do wonder if they had someone in mind as Jeff and Comfort's senator's son. They mentioned that this was in the southernmost Midwest. I noted they didn't actually identify a state, which is probably you don't want to get the censors on you for kind of implying that some senator is a demon child. But, I'm wondering what states that could be. Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. And I went out and I looked, and I didn't see any Myrtlebanks as senators back in the 60s. I did want to point out that this episode was identified as by Ryan Coogler as an influence on the movie Sinners, which we covered a couple of months ago. So, Chris, what did you think about the last rites of Jeff Myrtlebank?
Thanks, Prof. First off, I want to give a shout out to listener Cat Victory as we're covering the Twilight Zone episodes that feature the late, great James Best. Prof, yes, nicely done. Great shout out for James Houghton. And to get some more trivia out of the way, Sherry Jackson, who played Comfort, was in the Star Trek episode What Are Little Girls Made Of? And to my TV rerun generation, she also appeared on Make Room for Daddy. She was Amal to Frank Gorshin's Riddler on the Batman TV show in the episodes Death in Slow Motion and The Riddler's False Notion, and she even did a Rockford Files episode, among numerous TV credits. We've mentioned James Best before. Again, shout out Cat Victory. He was in the Twilight Zone episodes The Grave and Jezebel. He was guitar player Jim Lindsay on The Andy Griffith Show. He was in the Burt Reynolds movie Hooper. And he's probably best known as Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane on the TV series The Dukes of Hazzard. Edgar Buchanan was here. He has a ton of TV and movie credits from the film My Darling Clementine, Shane, and he was Uncle Billy on Leave It to Beaver, and of course he was Uncle Joe on Petticoat Junction. Dub Taylor, nice to see him here. Perfect, that guy. He was C.W. Moss's dad in the movie Bonnie and Clyde. He did a lot of Gunsmoke appearances. He was on Hee Haw, and he was the semi-recurring character Houston on Little House on the Prairie. Ooh, for the thoughts on this episode, wow, this is a country-flavored Twilight Zone episode, and it's not written by Earl Hamner Jr., but Montgomery Pittman, and he also wrote the Twilight Zone episodes The Grave, again featuring James Best, and the episode 2 with Elizabeth Montgomery and Charles Bronson that both Prof and I loved. Like The Grave, this Twilight Zone episode had a great and solid cast, and like a good Twilight Zone episode, it had a great and creepy opening with James Best's Jeff opening his coffin and sitting upright. Now, look at the scene. There are a lot of ways an actor could have done this, but I think Best does it in a very effective way with his stiff back and the head turn. It's not overly animated, and in a sense of not overshock or panic. And I think it's unintentionally and intentionally creepy both at the same time. It's scary and a little menacing. What also, in my opinion, makes this scene work is the reaction of those at the funeral. Not just those inside in this very, very small and cramped church, but the two curious boys outside looking in through the window. Everyone is confused and everyone is outright scared. It's a very, very creepy scene. Taking a step back, if I had any quibbles with the episode, it might be this zippy, electronically sounding harmonica music. Now, while this episode leans into a country flavor, at times I found the music a bit distracting and kind of loud, and I just wonder if this would have worked differently if some low guitar chords were strummed in here, or perhaps maybe even no music or less music or no music at all. I wonder if it would have made it more effective if a little bit less was used and we got a little bit more of the acting carrying the load here. I thought Best's line where he says he had to fix a fence on the East 40 was a little kind of country cliche as well, but such as it is. That said, I do like all of the acting here in this particular episode, and everyone gave us an outstanding performance, in particular, Best as Jeff, who practically, look at the guy, he has to reinvent himself and try to erase the townspeople perception of him. Now, so much so that ultimately he's got to be resigned to it, and then he has a flip in 180 and he has to lean into it by telling the townspeople, by saying, hey, if you're not afraid of me, you've got nothing to worry about. And if you are afraid of me, don't agitate me or I'm going to make your life hell, in a manner of speaking. This is a weird one because the period Twilight Zone episodes always, to me at least, had a different flavor, and this was no exception. This is sort of a back in time versus an episode that has a then contemporary setting. But nonetheless, I thought it was very effective and it worked as a really creepy ghost story, but not really a ghost story. And this is a little bit of a different Twilight Zone as there's no real sci-fi here. But for me, this is a weird episode nonetheless, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Prof, any other thoughts and impressions?
I love this episode, and Best was so good. He just was, the camera loved him. This is my favorite thing that he's been in so far. I thought he was terrific. So, The Last Rites of Jeff Myrtlebank is one of our favorite Twilight Zone episodes.
Not just another comic brigade. These are our friends